Gentlemen, Ms. Administration, I would like to call this Policy Committee meeting to order. Today's Thursday, September 22nd, 12:30 p.m. And Dr. Montoya?
One of the important parts of a school district is to have current policies that all employees are very familiar with and that can be implemented and enforced. And there were some areas here very recently that we're trying to, in essence, update and share with the board some ideas to improve these areas. And one, obviously, is the criminal history checks, the vacation days and benefits, and then the last one is the employee grievances. But at this point, I'll go ahead and turn it over, first of all, to Dr. Atkinson, and then Mr. Arambula, who can share the specifics.
Thank you, Dr. Montoya, Mrs. Longoria, and members of the board. We have the three policies that we have discussed briefly, informally over the past few weeks. Really, most notably is our DED local, which is our vacation days benefits. And Mr. Martin here is going to go over some of the changes here. But just so that you know, one of the things that we've already had to address with some of the employees, the policy changes that were made in August by the board has already approved them. What happens before we can update the policy online, it goes to TASB. There's usually 4 to 6 weeks before they formalize it so that we can post it. So sometimes they'll say, well, this is not the policy that's online right now. Well, it isn't, because there's a process that takes place. So what we are going to probably start doing, though, is we're going to go ahead and PDF it, send it to all the campuses' locations so they have what's been changed, and that we're awaiting the update to the online policy. And so that'll hopefully help clear up some things. Specifically with DED local, the board did take action in July. Prior to July, the end of June, when you adopted the budget, there were some changes since we were doing away with half of the days. Then we had another adjustment in July when you gave back a few days. So now that Mr. Garcia and Dr. Montoya are going to be bringing back to you all in October, where you reinstate those days, that'll necessitate another change. So this is in preparation for the next October meeting, where basically we revert back to the original, where there are going to be, it's a full restoration of the days. So we just wanted you to be aware of that. And then through DGB Local, we did have some discussion with our associations on 2 of the areas that they had some concerns with, and we definitely felt through quite a few discussions, it took 3 different meetings for us to go through it, that we felt very comfortable and we're in agreement of those 2 suggestions. And so I'll turn it over to Martin. He can get started. With your permission, Ms. Longoria.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Ramula?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Longoria and Superintendent Montoya. The policies that we were asked to bring up before you were DED local under compensation and benefits, vacations, and holidays. The support staff vacation language was changed, and there's a new language that put in there for late hires on a pro-rata basis according to the following schedule. And that goes down to the table that, if you can briefly look at that, the changes on Christmas holidays for working days, we had 2 days there, and the proposal is to change from 2 days to 1 days. And then below that, Labor Day was added. It's a total new row that was added in there to include Labor Day as well, and it's straight across the board, 1 day. As well on Christmas, it's straight across the board from 2 to 1. Now, additionally, the biweekly 261 total day category includes employees in and this is new language that's added in there, the athletics, media center, maintenance, security, warehouse, facilities, transportation, and food service departments and district custodians are included now. Any questions on that? And this was, as Dr. Atkinson reflected, that it was the mandate that came about at the board meeting in the latter part of July.
Any questions?
Just real quick on the working days for Christmas, 1 working day instead of 2. So meaning that that's what they get paid, just one instead of two? Is that what I'm understanding, or can you elaborate on that? Anyone?
Thank you, Dr. Montoya, Ms. Longoria, members of the board. What happened, if you remember, when Mr. Garcia first explained this last meeting, as long as we could identify the 2 days that would have to be taken, then it would allow us to restore all the days. So if you look at Labor Day, wasn't one before, now it is. So they're still getting the 2 days, we just had to divide them up.
Thank you. That's it. That's what I understood. I want to make sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now, on the policy DGBA local, under employee complaints and grievances, on the third page, under the category of level 3, the new language has been inserted in there as requested, is where the grievant has the right to ask for an open or a closed hearing before the Board of Trustees. The superintendent of schools has final approval regarding such requests.
Okay. Did you want to say something, Dr. Saavedra, or?
No, go ahead.
You want me to address
Yes,
it?
go ahead.
Okay. I was just wondering if we could leave it as is, just change the word district to superintendent of schools, so that we could leave this, will be presented in open or closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act and other applicable law. Instead of just, the superintendent of schools has final approval regarding such requests.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if I may add, I think we were concerned to make sure that it was in accordance and not to assume, but that we do list that it is in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act and other applicable law.
And Dr. Montoya, if I may, that's a good suggestion there, and we might want to regroup the sentences. I think that what happened is that when they said the district, they wanted to identify who it was. Was it the board attorney, the board president? Was it the superintendent? Who was going to make that call? That was the only reason that we left the superintendent in there. But maybe we can add that to the as a rider to that that paragraph right above where you read.
Yes.
And add that superintendent to there, unless you want to leave it, you want to identify whether it's the board attorney or the board president or the board as a whole. But what they're trying to do is to identify who's the one that's going to have that authority to say whether it's open or closed.
Right. No, it would be the superintendent of schools.
Yeah, I don't think we had a problem with the superintendent taking that
We want to
initiative.
put that right
We want to
after
make
CBE?
sure that we do list that it is in accordance.
Right.
So maybe instead of district, just change that to the superintendent. You see that passage
Oh, I
there?
got you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just change the word
Instead of
district.
putting all that other wording, just leave it and just change superintendent instead of district.
Okay.
And that way, everything else stays. And only because we want everybody to know that it is in accordance with the Open
The
Meetings
meetings.
Act.
And
I'm trying to identify, to let them know, it's not something we're doing. It's something that we're complying with what the law requires that we do.
Right.
And that way they don't feel like we're stripping them of their rights.
Rights.
Right?
And Dr. Montoya, the members of the board, the request for by the associations was to have it included in the policy that the grievant had a right to ask for it. Now, of course, the district, through the superintendent, would make that call, but apparently, and again, past history, unfortunately, has had them concerned, even though we have been very open with it. We've already had 2 open hearings to begin with. They would like to see that be considered for inclusion, that they do have a right to ask for it, but the district, again, will determine whether it's meeting with those
Well, and maybe
policies.
that statement can preclude that whole passage there.
Sure. That looks
I
good.
wouldn't have a problem with that.
That would look good.
Grammatically, it would be okay, and then
Sure.
it still fills the purpose.
And I think the key would be also for us to verify, as you said appropriately, Dr. Saavedra, that it does meet the state law, the requirement.
If I may, I guess you're putting this in here just to let people know it's in writing. I'm not making this up because we're only human and we might not know.
Well,
And this avoids needless little problems. Is that what that is? 'Cause it's in black and white?
and I tell you, the comment that Tom Petrini I believe is his last name.
Pantureri.
I might have
Pantureri.
I might have not pronounced it correctly. Mr. P is what I've been calling him. Anyway, his comment was, he said, well, okay, it's working well now, but in the future, if you all are not in place, then what happens then? Then we go back to fighting about whether or not we have a right to ask or not. So, that was the comment he had made.
I'm
So.
okay, I follow
Yeah.
your lead on this, and I
Yeah, no, we're okay giving the grievant the right to ask for an open or closed meeting. That sentence is okay. But the superintendent of school has the final approval. I think you should remain with the original statement, just change district to superintendent of schools.
And we're going to put the grievant has the right, we're going to have that sentence before the superintendent shall determine.
Yes.
So we're
Right.
going to flip that, right?
Right.
Okay, got it.
yeah, because it kind of
Yeah, that'll start the
leaves room for
passage.
doubt.
Okay, good. There's just one other section. On the introduction of evidence. Oh, that right here.
Okay. On the introduction of evidence, the new language proposed goes as following. All parties must introduce all evidence at level 1 of the grievance procedure. If a grievance is filed because of a written document received from the employee's supervisor, all evidence must be introduced at level 1 of the grievance procedure. All other grievances that are filed, the administration may introduce evidence at level 1 and/or level 2. All parties may introduce new evidence if the new evidence occurred after the previous hearing date. The new evidence must be received by the opposing party at least 5 business days prior to the upcoming hearing.
Any questions? Let's,
And if I understand correctly, the association kind of went through the language. You said you met and kind of, right? Okay, so they understood what we're saying with it.
yeah. Dr. Atkins?
Yeah, Mrs. Longoria, Ms. Peña, just so that you know, this language was being recommended by them in terms of, they said they had a few issues at a few of the campuses where at the level 1, hearing, after the level 1 hearing, when they got to level 2, then there was some document or some type of letter that surfaced that they felt was untimely, and had that been produced at level 1, they wouldn't have been at level 2. So I think for the most part, this is just going to, again, formalize this documentation has to be given at level 1. And if it's at level 2, then at least you have 5 days prior to the hearing, because no one wants to be embarrassed at the level 2 hearing. If they get an opportunity to say, you know what, I withdraw my grievance, because obviously you have information that would have supported that action, then they want that ability to do so. So it doesn't look like their grievance was denied based on, not being, being ill-prepared or not having justified filed that grievance.
Yes, ma'am.
And we ran it by legal as well?
It was already forwarded to Mr. Michelle. I can tell you that he is, if I'm not mistaken, he hasn't yet to respond back to us, but it is not anything that's in conflict with existing policy.
Ms. Longoria. And I want to thank you, administration, for working with the teachers and coming to amicable decisions on this. This is important because this makes all the transition when you have problems a lot easier to deal with. So I thank you for that, for giving them that opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Montoya. Because I'm hearing what you all are doing, and I really appreciate that, because it's a joint effort.
Dr. Montoya, Dr. Atkinson, Mr. Aramula, these changes have been reviewed by TASB as well? Or are they will be going to TASB?
Yes.
Yeah.
They will be going to TASB.
So we'll look at it based on policy from the state.
And just that, as an addition to that, when we send it up and it's board approved, TASB does, their legal folks review it, and if they have concerns, they will get back with us and tell us that, let's say, if it doesn't meet criteria or they don't feel that the language is adequate, they'll tell us why. But pretty much, they're really good about, once our legal folks review it, it works pretty well.
Okay, thank you.
Then,
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Montoya, Mrs. Longoria, the last item is the DBA local. We gave you both policies, the local and the legal. This is on the criminal history checks, and I know that we've had some discussion on what the policy states currently on the need to process criminal history checks for employees. So we wanted to make sure, most districts really don't have a local policy. They stick to just the legal policy. But we do have a local policy in the district. And this is really, at this point, we're not recommending any changes here, but we are suggesting the possibility of allowing us to do an administrative regulation so that we can go back and ensure that those that are currently employed with us have gone through a fingerprinting or a national check, because there were several that, due to their lack of certification, did not go through that process. So we would like to identify them and then advise the board through a weekly update that these are the numbers of employees that would have to be processed, and we would like to go ahead and proceed with that. It's more of an administrative issue, but because it's not already included in policy, we wanted to just advise you that we would like to do an administrative regulation to address the issues of non-certified personnel that did not get the fingerprinting or not go through a national check.
Would it be possible to implement it into one of the policies, either or local policy?
Very possible. We have not. I know that Martin's already looked at asking TASB for a policy. There's been zero. It's normally they go with the state mandate first, which is all certified and newly hired people since 2009. So everyone else prior to 2009 are not being compelled to do it unless the district says, we think it's a good idea, we should be doing it. So there's zero policy out there on it. So what we would like to, again, consider is having an administrative regulation.
Right.
And we can bring that to y'all so y'all know, but we don't suggest that it be a board policy at this point, because it would not be something that TASB would recommend as a policy.
Okay. Any questions?
Reasonable?
Sounds good.
Okay. Now we go to item 3, public input regarding items reviewed and discussed.
Good job.
No public audience? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Record time.
Thank you.